A golden generation, 4 lost finals, and a captain crying and quitting his country. For decades, Argentina had the best player alive and absolutely nothing to show for it. The biggest chokers in football, until they handed the whole thing to a man who had never managed a senior team in his life, and the entire world laughed. So how did this nobody turn a graveyard into the most feared team on the planet? To answer that, you have to go back to the wreckage. To understand the fear, you first have to understand the failure, and Argentina failed beautifully. For decades, this was a country drowning in attacking talent and unable to win a single thing that mattered. The cruelest joke in football. All that genius, all that passion, and nothing to put in the cabinet. Go back to 2010, South Africa. Argentina had Gonzalo Higuain, a genuine number 9. They had Carlos Tevez bullying defenders in the Premier League. They had a young Angel Di Maria and a young Nicolas Otamendi. Not the deepest squad ever assembled, but dangerous. And in the dugout, Diego Maradona, one of the greatest players who ever lived, and a man with absolutely no idea how to run a team. Individual brilliance dragged them to the quarter-finals. Then they ran into an actual functioning team, Germany, who beat them 4-0 and sent them home. Maradona got sacked. And the talent never stopped coming. This was never a poverty of ability. Argentina produced world-class footballers, the way other nations produce postage stamps. The problem was always the same. Nobody could turn that pile of individual brilliance into a unit that held its nerve when it mattered. Then came Sergio Batista for the 2011 Copa America, which Argentina hosted. They drew with Bolivia. They drew 0-0 with Colombia. They lost in the quarters to Uruguay. Batista got sacked too. Notice the pattern yet. Alejandro Sabella came next, and credit where it is due, he was the best of the bunch. He built something solid and dragged them all the way to the 2014 World Cup final. They lost to Germany, again. And here is a detail that tells you everything about Argentina's luck back then. Di Maria, the one man who might have unlocked that final, was kept off the pitch by injury, with Real Madrid showing roughly zero interest in risking their asset for a country. Messi needed help that day. He did not get it. It was not just bad luck either. It was the same recurring curse. Gonzalo Higuain, lethal for his club, somehow could not hit a barn door in the Argentina shirt and missed a glorious chance in that 2014 final.
Huge thanks to our sponsor OK Jersey. If you're looking to add high-quality kits to your collection, from the latest 2026 season to iconic retros, they've got you covered starting at just £15. Please use my promo code MAUS to get an 8% discount.
The pattern was always the same. World-class players freezing the instant they pulled on the blue and white. The shirt felt heavier than the trophy. After that, the heartbreaks stacked up like funeral flowers. The 2015 Copa America final, lost. The 2016 Copa America final, lost. Both on penalties, both to Chile. 2 finals in 2 years against the same opponent and the same gut punch ending both times. The football gods were not just ignoring Argentina, they were taking notes and laughing. After that 2016 defeat, Messi missed his spot kick, sank to the turf and cried. Then he announced he was finished with the national team, the greatest footballer alive, broken by the country he loved most. Let that picture sit for a second. Not beaten by a rival, beaten by the weight. He came back, because of course he did. But 2018 in Russia was a shambles. A confused, fractured squad under Jorge Sampaoli got dumped out in the round of 16 by France. Somewhere in those wilderness years there was also a Gerardo Martino spell that went precisely nowhere. Russia was rock bottom, dressed up as a World Cup. The team looked lost on the pitch and the manager looked lost on the touchline. They scraped out of a weak group by the skin of their teeth, then ran into a young France side and got picked apart. Messi, surrounded by chaos, could do nothing. It was the kind of exit that ends careers and ends eras. The keeper that summer was Willy Caballero, a man who, on the evidence, could not save a Word document. The defence was a rumour. The midfield was messy and a prayer. Plenty of people watched that France defeat and quietly decided it was over. Messi's time was done. The torch was passing to a 19-year-old named Kylian Mbappe, who had just run the Argentine defence ragged. Argentina were the chokers, the bottlers, a golden generation with nothing to show for it, and they were about to hand the keys to a man almost nobody had heard of. When Sampaoli and Argentina finally agreed to part ways, the federation was a wreck, broke, embarrassed and fresh out of obvious answers. So they turned to Lionel Scaloni. If you are wondering who that is, congratulations. Scaloni had been one of Sampaoli's assistants, a former fullback with a quiet, unremarkable playing career. His head coaching experience at the senior level added up to a grand total of 0 games. The Argentine media did not hold back. Most of them laughed at the appointment. Some treated it as a placeholder, a temporary warm body to keep the seat occupied until a real manager could be found. The man hired to lead a nation of 40 million obsessives was, in everyone's eyes, an accident. And you could understand the doubt. This is a country where football is not a hobby, it is a religion, and where the previous job had chewed up genuine legends and spat them out. Maradona himself could not do it. Why on earth would an assistant with no senior experience and a forgettable playing career fare any better? On paper, hiring Scaloni looked like surrender. He was supposed to be a caretaker. He turned out to be an architect. And here is what makes it sting for everyone who doubted him. Talent alone never won Argentina anything. They had proven that for over a decade. Maradona had genius and no plan. Even Sabella, the best of the lot, fell just short. The lesson Argentina kept refusing to learn was that you need a real manager, not just a famous name. Scaloni was about to teach it to them the hard way. Because while everyone mocked the resume, he was quietly doing the one thing none of the big names before him had managed. He was looking at Argentina honestly and asking a very simple question. What does this team actually need? The answer was not more magic. Argentina already owned the most magical player who ever lived. The answer was everything around him. For years, the national team had treated Messi like the solution to every problem. Give him the ball, get out of the way, pray. It never worked. One man cannot press, cover, defend, create and finish for 90 minutes against the best teams on earth. Especially not a man easing into the back nine of his career. So Scaloni built a 4-4-2 formation. Nothing exotic, nothing that would make a tactics nerd weep into his spreadsheet. But it was ruthlessly practical. He surrounded Messi with runners, lungs, soldiers, players who would do the ugly work so the genius could save his energy for the moments that actually decided games. Rodrigo de Paul became the engine, sprinting into every duel, closing every gap, running until his legs filed a complaint. Critics sneered that he was just Messi's bodyguard. They missed the point entirely. Every great artist needs someone to carry the paint. Then there was the quiet miracle Scaloni understood that the rest of the world refused to. For these players, domestic form simply did not apply. A man could spend his whole club season being booed half to death, pull on the Argentina shirt, and transform into one of the best in the world at his position. Take Alexis McAllister. Poor by his own high standards during one club season, a step slow, a player who looked half finished for long stretches, winning every duel, gliding past people, from certain camera angles, with the beard and the movement, you could genuinely mistake him for Messi. Same man, completely different animal. Take Cristiano Romero. Maybe he makes mistakes for his club. Maybe he gets sent off in the Premier League. Pull on the Argentina shirt and he becomes one of the most disciplined, picking his moments, winning every header, throwing his body in front of everything. He treats every 50-50 like a personal insult. Next to him, Lisandro Martinez. Undersized, and utterly fearless. Drop him out of the toxic environment he sometimes plays in at club level, and he looks incredible. Put those two together, and attackers simply stop scoring. At fullback, Nahuel Molina and Nicolas Tagliafico flying up and down the flanks, defending with the kind of aggression you only seem to get from South Americans who would genuinely run through a brick wall for this badge. Molina was a genuine weapon at club level too, the kind of right-back who scores screamers out of nowhere. Tagliafico lives in the opposition half, overlapping, crossing, never tiring. These were not passengers picked to fill a shirt. They were aggressive, athletic, two-way fullbacks who fit Scaloni's plan perfectly, because the plan demanded everyone outside of Messi work like a dog. Add Enzo Fernandez to the midfield, a box-to-box machine whose chance creation gets wasted week to week at club level, but explodes the moment he plays for his country. He drops deep, he dictates, he crashes the box, he scores when he has to. And in goal, the most important upgrade of all, Emiliano Martinez, a keeper who in 2018 was nowhere near this team, a man who, not long before, had left Aston Villa and could not find anyone to sign him. In knockout football, he is a different beast entirely, confident to the point of arrogance, fearless, the exact opposite of everything Argentina used to have between the posts. There is something almost unfair about this Argentina side, and the players admit it themselves. The moment they put on the national team shirt and step out next to Messi, their numbers jump. It is like a video game. A solid club player becomes a great international one. A great one becomes untouchable. Listen to how they talk about it in interviews, and they do not deny it. They will tell you Messi drags them to a level they cannot reach anywhere else. Part of that is chemistry, and chemistry is the one thing money cannot rush. Look at how Spain dominated from 2008 to 2012, 2 Euros with a World Cup in between, built around the same spine for years. Players came and went, but Xavi, Iniesta, Ramos, the core stayed. That is the model. Argentina have the same thing now. The same group that won in 2021 won in 2022 and won again in 2024. In international football, that continuity is gold dust. You only get your players together a few weeks a year. By the time most teams gel, the next World Cup has arrived and half the squad has aged out. Argentina cracked the code. Same warriors year after year who know each other's movements blindfolded and would run through a wall for the man wearing number 10. Argentina became hard to beat. Organised, nasty, a team finally, instead of a one-man rescue mission. The talent had always been there. Somebody just needed to point all of it in the same direction and let Messi be the finishing touch instead of the entire plan. Now they had to prove it where it counts. The first real test came in the cruelest possible place. The 2021 Copa America final against Brazil in the Maracanã, in Rio de Janeiro, in the spiritual heart of Argentina's oldest enemy. Picture the weight of that. 28 years without a major trophy. Every ghost, every choke, every crying photo of Messi, all of it pressing down on their shoulders. And to break the curse, they had to win in their rival's living room, with the entire footballing world fully expecting them to fold one more time. It was the toughest final this group would ever face. Brazil was a monster, and the stakes were not just a trophy. If Argentina loses this one, the whole story dies in the cradle. Messi may retire for good. Scaloni, despite reaching a final, may get fired. Everything that came after never happens. Understand the history here too. This was not just any opponent in any stadium. The Maracanã is where Brazil goes to feel invincible, except during the 2018 World Cup. Argentina had not beaten them in a final on this kind of stage in living memory, and they had not lifted anything at all in 28 years. A loss here would not have been a setback. It would have been confirmation of every cruel thing anyone had ever said about Messi's Argentina. They did not fold. Angel Di Maria, the angel himself, chipped a delicate finish over the keeper. A goal almost identical to one he scored against Brazil at the Olympics years earlier. One goal. That was all Scaloni's machine needed. Argentina defended with their teeth, their shins and their souls, and they held on 1-0 in the Maracana against Brazil. Here is the part nobody likes to mention. Messi was not good in that final. The greatest player of his generation had a quiet night on the biggest occasion of his life so far. And it did not matter, because for the first time, his teammates carried him. That was the entire revolution in a single match. Argentina no longer needed Messi to be a god. They just needed him present, while 11 warriors handled the rest. And do not underestimate what beating Brazil specifically did to this team's soul. For 28 years, Argentina had carried the weight of being almost. They shed all of it in their rival's own cathedral. The whole country wept. Messi finally had his international trophy, his Player of the Tournament award, his top scorer prize, and, most of all, proof that the curse was a lie someone had told him. The drought was over, the dam had broken, and Scaloni was only getting started. Confidence is a drug, and Argentina was suddenly hooked. In 2022, they met Italy, the reigning European champions, in the finalissima at Wembley. This was supposed to be a tight, cagey duel between two trophy winners. Instead, Argentina took them apart, 3-0. The Italians never saw what hit them. Notice the opponents Scaloni's team kept beating. Brazil in their backyard, Italy, the champions of Europe. These were not flat-track wins padding a record. This was Argentina stepping up to the biggest names available and taking them down one by one, building a wall of belief brick by brick. By the time the World Cup in Qatar arrived, the doubters had gone quiet. Argentina were no longer the chokers. They turned up on a 36-game unbeaten run, ranked among the favourites, with Messi finally surrounded by the team he had waited his entire career for. The mood around this team had flipped completely. The same nation that once braced for heartbreak now expected to win. That is a heavy thing to carry into a World Cup, and Scaloni had built it in barely 3 years. And then, in their very first match, they lost to Saudi Arabia. It was one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history. 2-1 to Saudi Arabia. The 36-game unbeaten streak, dead in a single afternoon. The old narrative came sprinting straight back. Same old Argentina, same old chokers. The bottlers had bottled it again on day one against a team nobody expected to lay a glove on them. This is the exact moment that defines Lionel Scaloni. A weaker manager panics, blows up the system, changes everything in a blind rage. Scaloni did the opposite. He kept his nerve, studied the tape, and made 2 cold surgical decisions. He threw Enzo Fernandez into the starting 11. He pushed Alexis Mac Allister out to the left of midfield. And the whole thing clicked into place like a lock turning. People underestimate exactly this about a manager. Talent does not win tournaments on its own. Argentina had spent a decade proving that. What Scaloni showed in that moment after the worst possible start was the one quality every great coach needs: adaptability without panic. He found the problem, fixed it with 2 changes, and trusted the system he had spent 3 years building. The players trusted it right back. Messi did what leaders do too. He came out after the Saudi defeat and told the fans and his own teammates to keep the faith. People had spent years claiming Messi was no leader because he did not scream or pound his chest. He led the only way that has ever mattered, by example. Then he produced one of the greatest individual World Cup campaigns the sport has ever witnessed. Enzo dropped beside De Paul and started dictating the game from deep. De Paul kept running, kept hunting, kept bleeding for the cause. Mac Allister added a third runner who could tackle, press and casually pop up with a goal. Julian Alvarez led the line as the perfect foil for Messi, a striker who quite simply never stops moving. Suddenly, the 4-4-2 was not a formation, it was a guillotine. They beat Mexico. They beat Poland. Messi scored against Mexico when Argentina's backs were against the wall, and the entire tournament was teetering on the edge of disaster, a goal that may have saved their World Cup before it had really started. In the round of 16, they got past Australia, with Messi finally scoring his first ever World Cup knockout goal in his 1000th career game, because of course the universe scripted it that way. In the quarter-final came the Netherlands, and a tie so spiteful it nearly turned into a full-scale brawl. Messi delivered a no-look assist for Molina that belonged in an art gallery, then buried a penalty. The Dutch clawed it back to send it to a shootout. And there stood Emiliano Martinez. He saved. Then he taunted the Dutch bench into the next dimension. The keeper nobody wanted in 2018 was now Argentina's most fearless man. Then Croatia in the semi-final. Messi scored a penalty and then turned one of the tournament's best young defenders completely inside out with a dribble that belonged behind glass in a museum. 3-0, Argentina were in the final. And then the final, France. The 18th of December 2022, the greatest World Cup final ever played, and it is not particularly close. Messi scored from the spot. Di Maria scored a goal of pure team poetry. A flowing move finished off at the back post to make it 2-0. For an hour, it was an execution. Argentina were not just winning, they were humiliating the defending champions. Then the script flipped. Mbappe scored twice in 90 seconds and dragged France back from the grave. Suddenly, the old fear crept back in. For a few minutes, it genuinely looked like Mbappe might score 4 or 5 and rip the trophy out of Messi's hands on the final day. Messi struck again in extra time, in the 108th minute, to make it 3-2. Surely now. Then Mbappe completed his hat-trick from the spot. 3-3. Penalties. The one place Argentina ghosts love to live. Emiliano Martinez, the man left without a club in 2018, made the save. Gonzalo Montiel scored the winner. Argentina were champions of the world for the first time since 1986. The whole thing played out like a film someone wrote to torture an entire nation and then reward it at the very last second. The dominance, the collapse, the extra time lead, the equaliser, the shootout. Argentina had lived through every version of heartbreak before. This time the script finally broke in their favour, and a country that had cried for decades got to cry for the right reason. Messi finished with 7 goals, 3 assists, 5 Man of the Match awards, and the Golden Ball as the tournament's best player, the first man ever to win it twice. The decade-long debate that had haunted him simply evaporated into the Qatari night. Maradona comparisons, choker talk, gone. And remember what that title actually erased. For years there had been a sick little game played with Messi's name. A revolver pointed at his head labelled World Cup, and if he never won it, it fired and killed his legacy. People had genuinely convinced themselves that the greatest player they had ever seen could not be the greatest ever until he lifted this one trophy. In Qatar, Scaloni's team took the gun out of his hand for good. The idiots who tried to shrink the campaign to just penalties were watching with blindfolds on. 7 goals, knockout goals, a no-look assist, a dribble through Croatia that ended a defender's evening. This was not a man getting carried to glory. This was a man finally given a team worthy of him, and a manager who knew how to use both. Scaloni, the caretaker, the placeholder, the punchline, had done what Maradona, Batista, Sabella, Martino and Sampaoli could not. He brought the World Cup home for the first time in 36 years. Winning the World Cup once is a fairy tale. What Scaloni did next is the part that made the rest of the planet genuinely afraid. A normal champion rides off into the sunset and slowly rots. Argentina got hungrier. At the 2024 Copa America, Messi was a shadow of his Qatar self. Age was visibly catching up. In the final, he limped off with an ankle injury that swelled up like a giant red tomato, the kind of moment that, a few years earlier, would have ended Argentina's hopes on the spot. Their talisman, gone in the biggest game. It did not even slow them down. Lautaro Martinez, a striker who used to vanish in the biggest games, came off the bench and scored in extra time. He went on to win the tournament's Golden Boot. The man who could not be trusted in the clutch had quietly turned into a closer. Champions again, back-to-back Copa Americas, with a World Cup wedged in between. A run that no Argentine side in history had ever produced. And that 2024 tournament was the real tell. It was a glimpse into the future. Scaloni has built a structure that keeps working even when its greatest piece is fading. Messi was not at his Qatar level. Age had visibly caught up, and it barely mattered because the system carried him for once, instead of the other way around. For the first time, Argentina were genuinely good without leaning on a miracle from number 10. Sit with what that means. Their best player, the greatest of all time, was hurt and ineffective, and they won anyway. This is a squad so deep that a striker as good as Julian Alvarez, the man who was clinical and relentless through the 2022 World Cup run, sometimes starts on the bench now. Every position has a warrior standing in it. Every single line can hurt you. Then came the result that should keep opponents awake at night. A World Cup qualifier against Brazil. No Messi. Rafinha running his mouth before kickoff, promising to put Argentina firmly in their place. Argentina beat them 4-1. Mac Allister scored. Enzo scored. Alvarez scored. Giuliano Simeone, Diego's son, scored. The goals came from everywhere, from every line, from players who did not need a genius holding their hand. Without Messi, they actually pressed harder, ran more, and humiliated their greatest rivals on the scoreboard. Think about how absurd that scoreline is. Brazil, the most successful nation in World Cup history, beaten 4-1 by an Argentina side missing the best player on the planet, after one of their stars had spent the build-up talking trash. That is not a result. That is a statement, hand-delivered to the entire football world. We do not need him to embarrass you. We can do it ourselves. That is the gap between a great player and a great team. Scaloni built a machine that does not switch off when its most famous part is removed. He built something designed to outlive Messi entirely, and the mentality is the scary part. Competing for every loose ball, battling in every duel, never giving up a single yard. This is a team that is both ludicrously skillful and completely unafraid of the dirty work, and that combination is almost impossible to plan for. You cannot out-talent them, and you cannot out-fight them either. So here we are. Argentina walk into the next World Cup as defending champions, and for the first time in living memory, they do it without a single ghost riding on their backs. They have already won it all. The World Cup, back-to-back Copas, the Finalissima, the pressure that crushed every previous generation has been lifted clean off, and a team with nothing left to prove and everything still to win is the most dangerous animal in sport. Going back-to-back has only ever been done twice in the entire history of the World Cup. Italy in the 1930s and Brazil around 1960, and not once in more than 60 years. The modern game is built to stop repeats. Every detail of how you won gets studied, replayed and prepared for. The 4-year gap ages your best players. Argentina do not seem to care. They are playing free, and free is exactly when this group is at its most lethal. And on the touchline, the quiet man nobody wanted. The assistant, the caretaker, the placeholder who was supposed to keep the seat warm and instead built a dynasty. The man the entire Argentine press laughed at now has a World Cup, 2 Copa Americas and a Finalissima on his shelf. Trace the whole arc one more time. He inherited a broken, humiliated team that had not won a major trophy in 28 years and had just been bossed around by France. Within 3 years, he had ended the drought in Brazil's own stadium, beaten the European champions and won the World Cup. Then he won another Copa, then thumped Brazil 4-1 without his best player. There is no luck in that sequence. That is design. The world spent decades laughing at Argentina. Lionel Scaloni made them afraid.